Welcome to UN Weekly, I'm Conor Lennon. Now, as this show's still fairly new, it's probably a good idea to remind you what it's all about. Well, we're here to look at the news from a UN angle, and each week we focus on a particular topic of interest. So on this show, we're going to zoom out. We're going to look at the entire global economy. Now, the clever people we have here at the UN Department for Economic and Social Affairs, or DESA for short, have been doing their crystal ball thing, peering into the future and predicting what's likely to happen. On the 16th of May, they released the mid-year update of their flagship report. It's called the World Economic Situations and Prospects Report. We always have snappy titles here. And it had interesting things to say about the continuing effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, the impact of wars and conflicts, and the transition to a clean economy. And that means one which is not based on fossil fuels. Now, this is going to mean a huge ramping up of the mining of rare minerals, many of which are only found in developing countries. So the question is, will the people who live in these countries actually benefit from this trade? A little later on, we're going to hear from one of the authors of the report to hear what they have to say. But before that, we have to say hi to this week's co-host. It's Heyi Zhou. He's from the UN News Chinese Language Unit. Hello, Heyi. Thank you very much for being here.
Hi, Conor. It's a great pleasure to join both of you.
Well, it's great to have you here. And I've just noticed, hey, we're all wearing school uniform today. We're all wearing these blue shirts and blazers for those who are watching. It wasn't deliberate, but it must be some kind of telepathic thing we have going on between us, which bodes well for the show. And welcome back to friend of the podcast, Dezhi Zhou.
Hi, Conor.
Great to see you here. Last time I saw you, you were wearing some kind of Elton John glasses at the UN
like
briefing.
this.
You've got them with you today here.
Oh, I couldn't see a thing now. Conor. Okay, yeah, there you are.
I'm right over here. Actually, they looked fancier in the noon briefing.
Yes, you got better lighting here.
So this was for the eclipse, right? So you were just showing that.
Yeah, that's why I said I cannot see a thing. Yeah.
Now, this is the start of the show where we have our news roundup talking about some of the big issues and the stories that you all have been looking at over the last few weeks, again, from a UN angle. And I think this is quite a big one that we've been talking about, Heyi, this issue of the International Criminal Court mandate. Many words have been written in all the languages about that. So how have you been covering it in the Chinese language unit?
Mm-hmm. First, I have to say it's very sad that almost like over 7 months has passed, like the war in Gaza is still making the headlines. And of course, this week, I think what caught the most eyes, especially among the Chinese-speaking audience, is the news about ICC's prosecutors seeking the arrest warrants from their judges against the Israeli Prime Minister and the Defense Minister, as well as 3 leaders from Hamas.
Yeah, it's been hugely controversial. Some countries have been agreeing with this. Other countries, notably, have been saying that they absolutely don't agree with this. And rightly, you said they're seeking arrest warrants. Yeah. There are no arrest warrants at the moment. So how have you been managing to break this down? I mean, what is the interest of people in China, the Chinese diaspora, in this subject? Is it different in some ways to the way that it would be covered in different languages?
First, I think what's important is that to tell the difference between ICC and ICJ.
Always a matter of...
Yes, that caused a little bit of confusion because for several months we have been talking about the ICJ, the ongoing case between South Africa and Israel. But right now, another term just popped up, ICC. So firstly, we need to explain it to the Chinese audience, the major difference between these two. And we know they are both the judicial bodies, but what's the major difference is that the ICC does not belong to the UN. The ICJ is one of the 6 main organs of the UN. And ICC was founded in 2002, and the mandate of it is also very clear to investigate and try what we call the gravest crimes. And what they tried is actually are individuals. But in the case of ICJ, it's dealing with the cases between countries.
Okay, so to break it all down, ICJ is the UN body, and it's countries taking other countries to court. ICC is an independent international court, and it is prosecuting individuals. So I'll turn to you, Dezhi. I guess you've been doing the same thing, breaking it down for the people who you are talking to on Chinese television.
Yeah, we also covered ICC, and also this week is the Protection of Civilian Week, and we also covered the open debate in the Security Council. And what amazed me and stunned all the Chinese viewers is what Assistant Secretary General Masuya's numbers. She said in the past year, in 2023, over 33,000 people died, civilians died, recorded by UN in the conflict zone. And that marks 72% increase comparing to previous year. That's stunning. And the thing is, if we think about the situation going on here, Gaza, it would be a very terrible figure, I think, so far we can say for this year as well. And also we covered the news that the UN was lowering the flag for the late Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi. That actually drew some curiosity from Chinese viewers, like, what's the standard for UN to lower the flag? So for that, I literally did some research, and I can tell you it's really a little bit difficult to find.
I don't know, several
whether
sheets of paper.
Yeah,
this is your homework that you've been doing.
It's called the UN Flag Code and Regulations.
Quick reminder that the president of Iran, President Raisi, died completely unexpectedly in a helicopter crash after coming back from Azerbaijan. And yes, as you say, flags were lowered. You said there was confusion, misinformation. So what kind of confused comments were you getting from Chinese viewers?
Well, the thing is, some of those we media writers, they said the UN lowered 17 times the flags and 6 times for Chinese leaderships or people like that. But if you check the history, actually it's not the case, because basically UN lower flags for heads, just like you mentioned, for heads of states, for heads of government, and also for those people, even for let's say victims of the earthquake in Wenchuan, China. That time the office of Geneva, UN office, actually lowered flags. So it's not necessarily the case that how many times UN lowered its flags. It's actually the protocol, like the regulation said, and by the request of the mission.
Well, if you want to hear Dezhi read out in full the entire flag regulations, then just email us unweekly@un.org, and maybe we'll do a separate show of you reading the whole thing. Who knows? Maybe people will be into that. We'll find out. Now, as I said earlier, the main topic of today's show is this global outlook, this zooming out and looking at where we're going, the crystal ball over the next few months. And I'll be talking about the big picture in just a short while. But as ever, we have different outlooks for different regions. I'm sure that you've been, as well as reading this, Dezhi, reading the whole report, the mid-year report. Let's talk a bit about the East Asia outlook. Was there anything that jumped out to you? I'll start with you, Heyi.
First, we noticed that the report has said globally there has been some improvements. So they have bring that up a little bit of the predictions for the second half of the year, and I think it's pretty much the same case with the East Asian. But actually, the numbers has stayed unchanged. They still, for 2024, it will grow by 4.6%. But we see some, like, we can see positive signs. First is like the trade is going up, and secondly, very interestingly, the international tourism has become warmer in this region, which means we have seen a growing number of the international tourists into this region. I think that's some aspect that we should not neglect it. And another point is that some, like the export-oriented economies in this region has also seen their increasing volume of exports, especially for the electronics.
The other thing that was interesting to me in this report, and again we'll come to this later, was the impact of net zero, the transition to net zero. And I'm interested to hear about the impact on China. But before then, I think we need to explain what net zero is. It's one of those phrases that we bandy around a lot here, and you don't quite know what it means, but maybe you're too afraid to ask. So we're here to help you out with that. No need to be embarrassed. Our resident explainer, Pauline Batista, is on hand every week to break it all down, and now she's going to break down net zero.
Hi, my name is Pauline Batista, and this is the UN Explained. I know you see it every single time you try to book a flight. Net zero. Well, what does it really mean? To stop rising temperatures, we need to lower the amount of carbon we create. Or to put it very simply, net zero means cutting carbon emissions to a smaller amount that can be absorbed and stored by nature. So, the UN Net Zero Coalition considers different carbon removal measures to reach a point where we lower emissions to a zero in the atmosphere. Hence the buzz term, net zero. Transitioning to a net zero world is one of the greatest challenges we face. It calls for nothing less than a complete transformation of how we produce, we consume, and of course, how we live. Anyway, would you like to learn more about how the UN is helping? You can go to news.un.org and search net zero. Ciao!
Right, so thanks to Pauline for clearing that up. Hopefully we all are on the same page about what net zero is now. So back to the impact on China. It must be having a huge impact. This move away from fossil fuels that the whole international community wants to happen, and we've had this at the climate conferences over many years. Are you seeing this big shift in China? You mentioned electric vehicles a little earlier, Dezhi.
Yes. Actually, in 2023, China sold around 8 million electronic vehicles. 6 million, more than 6 million of them are sold in China. And export is around like 1.5 million.
But growing quickly.
Yeah, because if you're comparing the traditional fuel-driven vehicles, it's like 20% only. But actually, it grows very fast. So these have, I think, twofold of good things. First, for the economy, just like I said, it's now a driving force. And second, I think it also got some impact on the environmentally protection side, because it just reduced the emission from the vehicles. Well, the thing is, if you look at what the Chinese, what we call the new three things do, the solar panels, the electronic vehicles, and the lithium batteries, you'll find something. It's a chain. So you have the solar panels as the production of the energy. And then you have the storage, which is the lithium battery. And then you have the end product, which is the electronic vehicles. So it's a chain. Like China, I think China didn't do this on purpose, but it's actually quite naturally transit to this way. This is what actually the UN always called for green energy. And this is a green energy and green economy. And I think this is it's a good example for that. And by the way, China now has already signed many factories in Europe, for example, in Hungary or in Mexico and many places. So this could also be a push for the global economy to become greener and to help the economy to switch to the new mode that will tackle the climate crisis.
Heyi, how are you covering this whole climate issue on the Chinese pages of UN News?
Well, we focus on data. So I have some very interesting data to share with you according to IRENA, which I need to explain it, right?
Right, IRENA, yes. It's the body that is not a UN body, but a UN affiliated body on
renewable energy.
The International Renewable Energy Agency.
Yes, a very specialized agency, and they have published the new data about the 2023, which has, I think, confirmed the observations of Dezhi. China has really contributed to the energy transition to the clean energy and the green energy. Because in 2023, for the annual newly added energy capacity from the renewables, there has been 473 gigawatts. And with solar energy accounting for 73%. And we need to see that the new capacity was concentrated majorly in China, EU, and the United States. And well, China has also reached a new milestone in 2023, with 85% of its new capacity coming from the renewables. So that's pretty amazing. However, we need to really boost it up to a lot of other countries, especially for the developing countries, because the IRENA also said the 473 gigawatts is actually off track to reach the 1.5 degree scenario by 2030. So how much do we need? If we want to triple the renewables capacity by 2030, which was decided at the COP28 last year, we actually need averagely 1,100 gigawatts each year.
Yeah, I mean, we shouldn't underestimate the huge task. And as you say, the fact that we are so off track to keeping global temperatures to below 1.5 degrees. But as Irina correctly pointed out as well, there are lots of bright points on the horizon as well. There's a lot of interesting work going on, and I'm sure we'll be coming back to this in future shows. In fact, we definitely will be talking about this in future shows. Now, on May the 16th, the UN released the latest prediction of the state of the world economy in the coming months. That's the report that we've been talking about, this World Economic Situations and Prospects mid-year update. Now, one of the findings was that people living in the countries rich in the minerals that we need to go net zero could end up remaining in poverty despite the newfound wealth of their leaders. After the launch, I spoke to Hamid Rashid, an economist at DESA, the Department for Economic and Social Affairs here at the UN. He's also the lead author of the report, and I asked him how we can avoid a new resource curse in developing countries.
This consequence is not inevitable, and this is what we are suggesting actually, how to avoid that consequence. So if you read it, the report, we're basically making a case here that if countries can have the right policies in place, and many countries are actually putting the right policies in place to avoid the resource curse, because they're learning from past mistakes.
So what kind of things can they do then?
So there are, for example, you can have comprehensive industrial and innovation policies. For example, in the previous commodity cycles, many of the countries in Africa or Latin America, their goal was to get as much minerals out of the earth and export it as raw ores and minerals. But this model is not very sustainable because you don't get much value. A ton of copper ore doesn't give you a lot of money. But if you can turn into copper wares and copper other materials, you can have a lot more value addition. And that's what countries are trying to do with innovation policies, industrial policies. It's a sort of a large set of policies coming together. For example, you need to have the right fiscal framework to make sure you have the right incentives. Often it's very difficult for countries in Africa or Latin America to have manufacturing, right? You have to bring the technology, you have to bring the right investment, but countries are paying attention to this round. So we are more optimistic that this can be avoided with the right kind of strategic decisions that governments can make.
So would that mean, for example, rather than just digging the mineral out of the ground, you're actually creating the components for example, an electric car in that? And is that happening? Are you seeing that in developing economies?
Some countries are looking into at least first stage of value addition. For example, even if you go to the component, in between the component and the raw, the ore that you get from earth, there's many steps in between. Take the case of lithium. Lithium you find in either in a rock form, as spodumene, or in a salt flat in like Chile and some Argentine place. And you need a lot of purification. And most of the times what countries will do, they break down the rock and make it a concentrate of about 7% of lithium content. And that will be exported to China. For China to process it further, because you need lithium purity level of 99.9%. But that from, say, 7% to bringing it down to that level of purity, there's a lot of processing involved. And some countries are now saying, look, we can do it better. Chile is trying to do, we do part of the processing there. African countries are not there yet in case of lithium, but they're trying to look at different options to have more value addition locally. Before you go to the component, this is like downstream. Now, you have the upstream mines, you have the midstream processing, and downstream basically components that OEMs, that it goes into the cars, and that's way down the road. Yeah.
And you mentioned that there are fears of a persistent demand-supply gap.
Yeah.
So, meaning that the supply of critical minerals, as you say, will lag despite this projected growth in potential demand. Now, does that mean that this energy transition that we want to see, this could be slowed down because we don't have enough minerals?
Yes, absolutely. It's sort of a, some ways it's sort of self-defeating because everyone is trying to bring, there's a lot of demand, anticipated demand that you want to have a lot more if you want to achieve net zero. Lithium production has to go up by 2.5-fold. Lithium carbonate production by 2030. This we have just 6 years left, right? 2.5 times. But technology is becoming also a hindrance because a lot of people are not willing to invest a lot of money into lithium processing if the technology shifts to something else. For example, there are, talking about sodium-ion batteries. Other technologies are also being considered. So that is why it's a paradox, because normally when there's a supply-demand gap, you would find prices to skyrocket. But in critical minerals, you're seeing the opposite trend right now. Prices are actually going in the opposite direction, especially for lithium, which is concerning. That means a lot of investments that need to come right now are not coming in because they're looking at the prices. They say, look, wait a minute, this price is not not giving the right signal. So we believe this is where the global cooperation is to be stronger. We need to be serious about achieving our net zero target, and there's no other technology available right now. To put it bluntly, the point that you made, that the amount of critical minerals we need in an EV car, we need to get dirty before we can get clean. So that's the window that we have, and we have to get it right. And we don't have a lot of time right now. And you're absolutely right. If we don't change the trajectory right now, we'll not be able to achieve the net zero target because there's no other viable technology available other than lithium-ion batteries right now. It may come in 10 years' time, but it'll be too late.
But not now.
Yeah.
Well, if you're interested in this area, and many people, I recommend you take a look at the report, which, Hamid, you have with you, the World Economic Situation and Prospect 2024 report, the mid-year update.
Yeah.
Where you can just Google that and you can find it. It's very easy to find, and I'm not an economist. I understood it, so the very clear language, and it's a very interesting read. Hamid, thank you very much, and we hope to see you for the next one.
Thank you, Conor. Have a good day.
That was UN economist Hamid Rashid. And if you're interested in finding out more, you can go to our sister podcast, simply called UN Interviews, where you can hear the full discussion. Now, gentlemen, I was watching a British TV cop show recently, and I want to tell you a few things about it. Very interesting. Firstly, when the characters were very happy, they had a cup of tea. When they were sad, they had a cup of tea. When someone was brutally murdered, as happens a lot in these TV shows, they had a cup of tea. Or if someone had a terrible accident, guess what happened? They had
a cup of tea.
Exactly. And that is because tea remains a British obsession. But not just in Britain, it's the most consumed drink in the world, which is why we're celebrating International Tea Day today. And as you both know, it's still big in China. And people have been drinking it for around 5,000 years for all these wonderful things, the weight loss, the anti-inflammatory, or just because it tastes good. I mean, I like a bit of milk oolong myself. And we're going to talk a bit now about tea, the importance of tea, why you love tea. And Dezhi, thank you very much for bringing in, for those who are listening rather than watching, Dezhi has brought in this beautiful, ornate TV cup. Hold it up for the cameras there so we can see. Is this your own personal daily cup?
Yeah, actually, this is someone gave it to me. I'm not an expert of drinking tea, but yes, I just do something.
Little pot on the top there. Oh, that is lovely. Can you explain? Is there a nice? It's in
a
Chinese, so it looks very
Chinese
classy.
poem, yes.
Yeah. So it's a Chinese poem because we usually have phrases like "best dad in the world," but obviously you've got this beautiful poem, which is all about tea, I presume.
Yeah, but I have to tell you, it's empty because drinks are not allowed in the studio.
Oh, that's a shame.
So yeah, it's just a demonstration. But I do have a question for you, Conor.
Sure.
Why British like to put milk in the tea?
Well, I've lived outside the UK for many years, and the rest of the world does not understand. They find it faintly revolting as well. But yes, tea does look very different. You've always kind of a splash of milk in it. It has to look a certain colour. It's not right.
Milk in tea now, right?
Bubble tea. Bubble tea, exactly. It's all milk. It's all milk. So what do you have a favourite?
I think I prefer black tea.
Black for me, green. But for me, my dad liked he's a heavy drinker, but like
That has a different meaning in English, by the way.
yeah, I know. But he put very strong tea in the cups. But for me, I like light taste. I don't like those strong tea because I don't really want to keep up myself, waking up in the middle of the night.
Fair enough. I think we should no longer refer to any of us as heavy drinkers, especially as we're all at work and we're very professional. Well, we'll leave it there for now. Yes, International Tea Day was at the beginning of the week, and you can find all the information on the main UN pages. But for now, thank you very much, Heyi, Dezhi, 谢谢你们. And if there are any more subjects you want us to talk about, any questions you have about us, the work of the UN, email us. That's unweekly@un.org. Studio production this week was by the UN TV team. The editor was June Park from UN Video. The executive producer was Mita Hassali. UN Weekly is a UN News production. Thank you and see you all next week.